What's really behind this special, unique day of Lag BaOmer? Why is it this particular day, the 33rd day of counting the Omer, becomes a day of celebration that hundreds of thousands, beyond 500,000 people, more than 500,000 people visit the grave site of the great, tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and all across the world, everything stops and we celebrate this day. How did a particular day in the middle of the summer become such a essential, special day as in the Jewish calendar? Where is the source, the foundation for such a custom? Can we all get up and pick a new day tomorrow to make it a special festive holiday? Something very strange behind how this day became the great day that it is, and we want to understand how that developed. The second thing we want to really appreciate is, why is it Rabbi Shimon's day? Of all of the tzaddikim that lived throughout the ages, great tzaddikim, there is no great day of celebration for Moshe Rabbeinu, for Avraham, for Yitzchak. Rabbi Shimon, one of the Tanaim in a particular generation, the generation after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, during the Roman persecution, so he was a great Tana, and no one can even think of we can barely even understand how great he was. But still, why should just him particularly, have this unique status as he has a day that we celebrate on Rabbi Shimon's day? And what is the nature of this day? So we're going to try to explore all of these questions today, particularly the sources that we're going to be using to unfold these mysteries is going to be the writings of the Arizal. We know that in the mid 1500s, the Arizal came and was one of the great mystics of his time, living in Tzfat. As a matter of fact, when we look at the writings about him and the stories behind him, he was, perhaps one of the greatest rabbis and mystics that have come into this world since Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon is the Rebbe of all Rebbes. There were rabbis, and then there's the Rebbe, and Rabbi Shimon is where all this mysticism and all these great Mekubalim and great Hasidic Rebbes, he's like the source of all of it. It all comes from the Zohar and the revelation of Kabbalah that began in the days of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So let's get started. Again, the writings we're using as the sources, the Ariz, and there's actually a nice book today that was put out by Mekubal from today's generation, Rabbi Yaakov Hillel. He gathers a lot of the information and gives some insights, because today we have access to many more manuscripts than some of the older generation rabbis, so he's able to kind of shed some light on one or two particular confusing matters. So we'll use that information as well. The name of the book is Eid Hagal Hazeh. If anyone wants to find it in the bookstores, it's only in Hebrew, but that also, he brings all of the information necessary to get a good handle on what this day is all about. So the truth is, we have to understand that when Rabbi Shimon is speaking in the Gemara, he's speaking as a halachic authority of that time, and in that sense, there were many halachic authorities. However, when Rabbi Shimon was Zocheh to be the conduit through which God chose to reveal the secrets of Torah in that time. Again, when Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah at Mount Sinai, he got the entire Torah. We're taught that he got the revealed Torah and also the hidden Torah. And that includes Kabbalah, the secrets of the Torah. However, he revealed and taught publicly and openly the revealed aspect of Torah to all of the Jewish people. That includes all of the halachot and even a lot of the different ideology that we have today. All of the books that we study in school, all this is part of the revealed Torah, the Gemara and the Mishnah, and even all the different hashkafa that comes from Midrash. A unique part of the wisdom of Torah that God gave Moshe was kept hidden. The hidden Torah of Kabbalah was not taught publicly, but reserved for the Jewish leaders, and amongst the leaders, even the most elite and biggest scholars of each generation. It was taught person to person, from leader to teacher to student, and it was a hidden wisdom from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu throughout Jewish history. It wasn't something that was accessible to the masses then. Now comes the 2,000 years ago, which is again around the Common Era, after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. The world no longer is going to have prophecy anymore. And again, this is many years from the Matan Torah. Matan Torah to the Common Era is roughly 1,500 years. I'm not a historian, but I guess we'll go with that number. If it's off, you guys can adjust it at home. You Google it and get the exact numbers. So basically, 1,500 years later, after the Jewish people were working on themselves and working with the Torah, So there was a collective spiritual result. The forces of evil that were unfortunately unleashed in the earlier days were weaker. And God saw fit to reveal at that point in time secrets of Torah that until then were not revealed. And he chose Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to be the teacher of these secrets of Torah. So for Moshe Rabbeinu until Rabbi Shimon, there was no one that came and revealed Torah in the way that Rabbi Shimon did through the Zohar. Again, about 2,000 years later, the Arizal comes and reveals further more secrets that until then had not been revealed. So we have like almost 3 periods of time where a great tzaddik, a great Jewish leader, stood up and was responsible for the giving of Torah to some degree. Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and the Ari. Now, interestingly enough, when we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu giving the Torah to the Jewish people, so there's a verse that talks about the great accomplishment that is represented in his struggle, and we know from the Midrash that he actually had to fight with the angels that didn't want to give that the Torah should be given to us. So the verse brought over there is Alita lamarom, you ascended upon high to the higher places in the spiritual realms, Vishavita shevi, and you were able to steal away from them this prized possession, the Torah. You were able to capture it from Shemayim and bring it down to earth. This is the great accomplishment Moshe Rabbeinu did in bringing the Torah to us. And we say in Gemara Menachot, the Torah is not in Shemayim. The Torah is here, it's ours. Unbelievable thing that he was able to steal it away from Shemayim, the Torah, and give it to us. The letters of the word Shevi, which mean this great accomplishment of bringing Torah from heaven down to earth, this like when you go to battle and you win the war against your enemy, so what you're able to take from them, all of the wealth that they have, that you take from them is called a Shevi. In English it's called the booty, like the spoils of war. So that's the term given you. Shavita Shevi, the spoils of the benefit of this battle, you fought the angels, now we have Torah here on earth. So the letters for Shevi are Shin Bet Yud. Now, if we look at Rabbi Shimon's name, so his name is hinted to in the Rashi Tevot of the Shevi, Shin Bet Yud. Shimon ben Yochai, Shin Bet Yud. So the mystics of his time explained that there's a hint to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in this pasuk. Alita lamarom, shavita shevi. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim and brought down a revelation of Torah, in a similar sense, not in the exact same sense, because it was all given to Moshe Rabbeinu, but in a similar sense, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, by virtue of his great holy and exalted neshama, was able to ascend on high and bring down the Torah of Kabbalah and reveal it in the Zohar, and that's Shevi. Alita lamarom shavita Shevi. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is the next great tzaddik that was able to be responsible for a new revelation, a new galut of Torah, of a level of Torah, a dimension of Torah that was until then concealed and limited. Like I said, 2,000 years later comes along the Arizal. And the Arizal again reveals Torah in a similar way that the Rabbi Shimon did. And the writings of the Arizal today are considered to be the deepest, most intricate, that talk about the highest levels of creation and existence from the moment that God decided to create and how creation ends up connecting with an infinite being of God. Some of the deepest ideas you can even think of are written in the writings of the Arizal, and anyone today that is considered a mystic, a Kabbalist, has to learn the writings of the Ari, and of course the Zohar and the other Sfarim that are involved. And so if we look at the actual Rashi Tevot of the Ari's name also, it's Yitzchak ben Shlomo. It's the same letters, Shevi, because we say also on the Arizal that he, by virtue of his great neshama, his sandak was actually Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi came to the father of the Ari and said, when your son's going to have Brit Milah, wait until you see me. And he came and he sat on the chair, and he was the sandak for the Ari. And of course, we know that the Ari was Zoche to Gilu Eliyahu Hanavi, that Eliyahu Hanavi came and taught him all the secrets of the Torah that he revealed later. And he was constantly teaching him and constantly by him. The unbelievable experience, that level of Kedusha and that the Ari reached. And so he's also in the same pasuk, Alita lamarom, shavita shevi, that he went to the heavens and brought down another revelation of Torah. As a matter of fact, it's great that these two rabbis are connected, and it's fitting because really it's through the Arizal that the minhag of Lag BaOmer is what it is today. There's really a connection between Rabbi Akiva and the death of his students and this unique day of Lag BaOmer. So what happens? the days of Omer are considered days of judgment, Yemei Din. And there's different levels of din. There's a level of din which is much more harsh, and its nature is to be more critical and punish. And then there's a more developed state of din of judgment, which is less harsh. So the beginning of the days of the Omer are very harsh days and very critical days. At the same time, the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, their souls were rooted in this level of judgment, of din. And so, since they were guilty of not living up to their full potential, and that the Gemara records that they did not respect each other properly, and these are very critical times, so the judgment was harsh on them, and it was decreed that all of these 24,000 students that were guilty of this shortcoming, since it was decreed upon them that they would all die. Now, the period of time that is called this harsh period, there's a shift in the middle of the days of the Omer where the chesed, kindness, starts to become revealed, and everything shifts and it softens up. There's not as much scrutiny. That unique moment where things shift is the 33rd day of the Omer, and things shift then. So, although the Gemara itself says that they died between Pesach and Atzeret, which means from Pesach to Shavuot, the Midrash says pras. It uses a phrase which implies the 34th of the Omer. From the Ari, we understand that and based on Kabbalah, that everything really stopped on the 33rd of the Omer. Now, that day is special not only because students stopped dying, because if we'll ask ourselves, why do we celebrate so much on the 33rd of the Omer because the students stopped dying? Guess what? They all died. They stopped dying because there were no more left. So that's not something to be happy about and to make a party about. Imagine someone has a house, it's burning, right? And it stopped burning when it was all burnt. So we celebrate that the house stopped burning. No, the house burnt down. We lost 24,000 precious, chachamim. There's nothing to celebrate about that. They didn't, if many of them were spared, that's one thing to be happy about. And still we wouldn't turn it into the day of celebration because of the respect for those that passed away. So we have to ask ourselves, why in the world do we celebrate? And this becomes one of the happiest days of the year. So it certainly cannot be because they stopped dying, because they all died. So the truth is that on that particular day, Rabbi Akiva, beside his students stopped dying, he went and took 5 other students that were his that didn't die, because those students represented a much higher level of completion. They were from a higher level, and they weren't included in the 24,000 that died. One of those students is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, I believe that's the last name, but if not, the first name is Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and Rabbi Yosei. These 5 students were the 5 students that he continued to teach after these 24,000 passed away, and he gave them smicha. And in fact, it's through these 5 students that the entire oral tradition of Torah and the whole legacy of Torah that began with Moshe was able to continue, because with the death of 24,000 students, the whole kiyum, the whole continuity of Torah was in jeopardy. And through these 5 students and the fact that Rabbi Akiva continued to teach on, the Torah continues to exist the way we have it today. Most of all the writings we have are from these students. Every Mishnah, a Stam Mishnah, is from Rabbi Meir. Then there's the Sifra and the Sifri. These are from the other rabbis, and it's mentioned in detail. It's mentioned somewhere. And most of what we have in writing is from the students of Rabbi Akiva. And so basically, through Rabbi Akiva and these new students is how we still have the Torah today in its functioning manner that we have it. So with this, we can appreciate really what we're celebrating. And what comes out from the writings of the Ari, aside from the deeper Kabbalistic ideas behind this, is that this unique day, the 33rd day of the Omer, is a day that represents the shifting from harsh judgment to more chesed, to more kindness and mercy. And it's on that day that the Torah that was in jeopardy of being lost is saved through these 5 students. And that's what we celebrate. It's a day of joy and celebration, because it's almost like on a certain level, like a day of giving the Torah. We could read the verse, Yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz, that the heavens rejoiced and the earth were gladdened, because Torah will continue. Now, and that's what we celebrate. Not that they stopped dying, because there were no more to die. Now, we still want to appreciate why specifically is this whole allure surrounded by Rabbi Shimon. There were 5 students. And for that reason, the Ben Ish Chai himself writes in his book about Lag BaOmer that really it would be appropriate to also go to Rabbi Akiva's grave. Those that live in Tiberia should go to Rabbi Akiva, and those that can't should go to Rabbi Meir, and those that are on their way back to Tzfat should stop at Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai. So we see the other Tanaim involved in this day of getting smicha and the day of like a new giving of Torah are all included in the simcha. But we have to know why Rabbi Shimon is unique and it's more him than anyone else. So for that, we could understand from what I started discussing. Since he was the unique rabbi that taught the Kabbalah, which is, again, what started being revealed in his time, and in that level, he was above everybody else. You know, we talk about, again, in the Gemara, when we argue, Rabbi Shimon argues, we don't always follow him. But in the Zohar, so his word in the Zohar, it's a higher level of revelation, and we don't argue against Rabbi Shimon in the Zohar. So he had that special, unique status, and he was essentially the Rebbe of his generation in that sense. And so that's probably why it's focused around him more than anybody else.